our Gen Z officers and those coming on board actually embrace it because they grew up around it. There's actually research that has been done that today's applicants, policing applicants, are choosing departments just as much as departments are choosing them, but they're looking for things. They're looking for technological sophistication. They're looking for forward-thinking leadership. They're looking for that innovation and growth piece, and they want to be a part of it. And so I applaud all of those things. And so departments that can really showcase that forward-thinking culture can really, I believe, attract some stronger talent because it is something that is norm to them that they grew up around.
Chief Doreen Jokerst, welcome to the podcast. Now you are currently the chief in Overland Park, Kansas. You came to Overland Park from University of Colorado. I'm sure we're going to get into this. There's some interesting stories there where you were not only the chief of police for the university, but I believe vice chancellor as well for public safety. And you also have your doctorate in education. Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's all correct. Yes.
Before we get into like what's going on in Overland Park, you and I were corresponding on a separate matter, and you sent this, and it like really captured my attention. I've been thinking about it over the past couple of days since you sent the email, and it was in a larger email, but this is what you wrote. It says, our goals are simple. We want to protect the vulnerable from harm, and we want people to run to us for help, not away from us. And the work that you're doing help us make that possible. But just on the sentence, like you want to protect the vulnerable from harm and you want people to run to us for help, not away. Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so in policing and public safety, that is really the goals behind it. The protecting the vulnerable from harm really comes from our mission out of the Curve. And the Curve is a nonprofit organization that was really stood up to help advance policing and public safety and really advance that space and get to the core of our why. Why are we here and what does that look like? And the reason why policing exists is to protect the vulnerable from harm. And so I'm super excited to be a part of the Curve and to be a founding board member and would love to discuss even more with that. And really, we do want people to run to us for help and not run away. So anything we can do, myself as a police leader, to build those bridges, to have those conversations, to build those community trust is something that I proactively engage with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the Curve, how it got started. It's a newer organization of, I don't mean this in a political sense, progressive police leaders. Police leaders are sort of thinking differently and out in terms of where the profession is going and should be going. But, what also struck me as I was reading that, it was just, again, not to be political, and I do want to steer away from that. But with things that's happening today, I mean, like you want to protect the vulnerable and you want people to run to you. And I worry that, certain conditions may prevail and people will not run to police for help. Just, curious how you think about that. And are you worried about it? And even, I guess, even more so, like it's important to push that mission and those goals today than maybe it's ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the Curve was founded out of the murder of George Floyd after 2020 and really came through from the leadership of Simon Sinek.
Big time guy, nationally known.
Big time, and did a lot of work in the space too, as being a guest speaker with IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And so he had reached out to some police leaders in his network and said, how do we get some forward-thinking police chiefs and sheriffs on a phone call to really dive down and talk about this crisis in policing and in public safety that we're currently having. And so we jumped on a call, and really I met a lot of police leaders from across the United States. And what we talked about was a leadership crisis in policing and what that kind of looks like. And so having those conversations really then delved into the formulation of the Curve and really talking about how do we bring innovation, forward thinking, and get back to the root and the why, which, Simon is so famous for, Start With Why, and The Infinite Game, another book of his, and Leaders Eat Last, but really talking about the why in regards to why does policing exist and talking about the history. And it's interesting that a lot of people don't know the history of policing and what that looks like. And so it kind of really formulated out of those conversations. And I'm super proud and honored to be a part of those conversations and be a part of that initiative.
He's a internationally known best-selling author. I mean, was it just the events of George Floyd? He wanted to get involved, and this is his way to get involved, and it sort of evolved into this organization that's known as the Curve today. And I think it's now you have an executive director and expanded its membership and all of that. But like, is that what it started from? Like he looked around, like, hey, how can I help? How can I get involved? Because he is obviously super well known, as I just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's absolutely how he got involved and wanted to bring forth positive change within the policing and public safety space, and reached out to those that he knew and said, "Hey, I need some assistance. This is what I'm thinking about doing. Can you invite some people that are like-minded, forward-thinking?" And sometimes those like-minded might not be a traditional metric or norm within policing and what that evolution looks like. And so it was one of the first conversations that I hopped on when I was still the assistant vice chancellor and chief of police at the University of Colorado Boulder.
Yeah. Do you still think we're in the sort of a leadership crisis in policing? Do you think things have evolved and or gotten better, headed in the right direction, or sort of where do you think it is in terms
Yeah,
of results of police leadership today versus say a few years ago?
I definitely think it's an evolution. You know, when we look at where policing should be and what that looks like, for me, it evolves around community trust and transparency. You know, I talk, as you said, I'm the chief of police at Overland Park. So I'm the community's chief. I'm also, internally the chief to our people, both our professional staff and our commission. And so anything I can do from a technology standpoint, an equipment standpoint, a resource standpoint, I want to make sure we're providing our people. And so for me, a lot of it is looking inward. How can we advance organizational culture? How can I make sure our people know that they are valued and treat them with respect in the organization? And so I think those evolutions in policing have occurred. I do think, when I got hired on in 1998, the leadership was definitely different, what that looked like from a hierarchy sense. And so for me, it's very much an open door policy. I want to make sure, the people that are in my span of care know how much I value them. I constantly say, Mike, like it's not lost on me how many birthdays, anniversaries, special events, holidays they have missed, providing public safety to our amazing community. I need to make sure that they know they're valued and that we appreciate them.
Right on. Well said. Now you are very close. You become friends with Chief Stacy Graves, who we've had on this podcast, the chief of Kansas City, Missouri, who is a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan and Taylor Swift fan. Now, did you have to become a Kansas City Chief fan when you moved up to Overland Park from Colorado and shed the Broncos, which I assume you're a Broncos fan? Now, do you bleed red like everybody else in that area?
That's right. I think I definitely had to become a Kansas City Chiefs fan. I tell you, Mike, when I first got here, I hosted listening sessions within our department, met with different divisions, met with different sections within our organization. And I tell you what, one of the number one questions that came up was, are we still going to have Red Friday? Mike, I didn't even know what that meant. And so they explained this is where we were Chiefs gear. And I thought, well, maybe that's just a police department or
Yeah.
something that's done in Overland Park. I have now since learned that is Kansas City Metro. If I were to get rid of Red Friday, Mike, it would not be good. But since my family is from Green Bay, I would hate to say I have been a Green Bay Packers fan. My
Oh,
husband's a Green Bay Packers fan. And so that it's now a dual purpose Kansas City Chiefs for sure and the Green Bay Packers.
a sign of a good leader. You know where to adapt. Now, you were at University of Colorado, and obviously, if anyone follows college football during your tenure there, a very famous coach was hired. Talk about
Mhm.
your interactions with Deion Sanders and how that changed. I mean, you obviously had to change some things and evolve the way your department protected him and the football games and folks coming in
Mhm.
for that. So maybe talk just a little bit about how that sort of changed your view when you have something like that happen within your
Mhm.
jurisdiction.
No, I really appreciate that question, Mike. And so, prior to becoming the chief of police at the University of Colorado, I spent 20 years in a municipal agency south of the Denver metro area, but it did not have a stadium. And so when I went to the university, I say is where I probably had my biggest growth moments and growth opportunities, learning anything from academics and interacting with our students, faculty, and staff, and then football. And so I'll never forget the athletic director, who I had an amazing working relationship with, brought me in his office and let me know, hey, we're going to be hiring a new football coach. And I said, no problem, Mike. I was on the onboarding, so I was used to meeting the football coaches. And I said, sounds great. And he's like, it's going to be Coach Deion Sanders. And I said, sounds great. And he just looks at me and pauses and says, it's Coach Prime. And I said, okay, no problem. When would you like me to meet with him? And he was like, Doreen, I know you don't really follow
Oh,
college
you had no
football, which
idea. You had
no,
no idea.
which was true. I had heard the name before, but college football and just following sports definitely was not as near and dear as it is now. And so I started watching some Amazon Prime documentaries and really talking about, we had such an amazing safety and security infrastructure there at the university, but I knew it was going to have to shift and pivot, and I was going to have to learn myself. And so I started reaching out to experts in the space, and I started reaching out to the NFL. I started reaching out to Major League Baseball and kind of talking about the best of the best. I knew we did some amazing things at our stadium. Maybe I didn't know the why behind it. And so I really wanted to make sure that I understood those stuff. I wanted to know our technology, our traffic ingress and egress points, and I wanted to know him as well. He was going to be a football coach. He was also a celebrity and a VIP, very influential in that space. But he was also a dad who was going to have kids coming to the campus too. And so all of those things came to fruition. And so my first meeting with him, I just say I have the utmost respect for Coach Sanders. He has always been, for me, a proponent of policing, a proponent of our police department there, and a proponent of public safety. And so we had some really great conversations in regards to it, and talking about what safety looked for him, what collaboration and partnership looked for him in policing, and really talking about what our posture should be and how that was. And we worked really great with the athletics department. And I say, Mike, we took a holistic approach. We brought in student affairs. What can we do from that angle? What can we do from athletics? What can we do with parking and traffic management? What can we do as police? And we really looked at it on a global platform to make sure that everybody was having an amazing time at our games, having a safe time, hoping for a CU, football win, and at the same time, making sure that those on the field and off the field were in the best safety platform that we could provide.
I mean, it had to be crazy though, like to go from pre Deion Sanders, and I don't know how many people used to go to football games there, to his first season. I just remember watching those games. I mean, that had to be pretty crazy though. As much as you planned and prepared and you were ready for it, but still, there were a lot of people coming in for those games, and celebrities coming in as well.
That's right. And so it does present a lot of different dynamics. And so the stadium sits a little bit over 50,000. Every game, Mike, was sold out. We had the students section, was a lot of fun, I say, for those students wanting to come and experience those events. But it was a night and day difference. Before you know it, really, CU became a focal point of college football. We had ESPN, we had game day, we had all these different entities also on our campus at all different times. And so it was really making sure that we had the right public safety posture that was not going to be too much, but making sure that it was visible, making sure that we provided the right resources, equipment, and training necessary to our teams, making sure that we collaborated with surrounding police departments. I'm so grateful for the surrounding police departments. My police department there could not have done it in and of itself. And so it really was a partner collaborative approach, but it was a night and day different, Mike. And what I can tell you is during that time, nobody read, I say, necessarily any challenges we had, but it didn't come without them. And so every Saturday would be pretty much a football game. And then on Monday, we had debriefs. And I talked to the chancellor's office. What did you see and what worked well in athletics? What worked well and what didn't work well in student affairs? And then we pivoted, right? One of the best things you can do as a leader, police leader or not, is the ability to figure things out, the ability to be adaptable and flexible. And so we had to adjust things on the fly for that next Saturday game. And so it was just really, I say, crucial conversations, making sure that we could say, hey, Mike, you should have done this better, and this was this, and how do we do it? But not accusing blame, because we all had the same mission. We wanted everyone to go there to have an amazing and fun experience, and we all wanted it done safely.
I mean,
so it was really great.
Almost like a sports team. Like, Monday morning, you're watching the tape, see how you can improve from, the game the weekend before. So your transition to Overland Park, I mean, were there lessons that you took? I want to talk about the World Cup, because obviously you went from managing large scale event every Saturday during the football season, and now everyone's talking about the World Cup, and you're one of the cities surrounding Kansas City where you'll be hosting athletes and not sure what else goes on there. So I'm sure there's some lessons learned. But before we get to that, were there lessons learned from policing a college campus, working with students and staff and faculty and parents, that you took, what are the differences and similarities, I guess, from going back into, working a city like Overland Park?
Yeah, as I said, I think the University of Colorado Boulder provided me the biggest growth opportunities, and it was really working with, different experts on campus, or different academics and faculty members that had done research when it comes to policing and public safety. And how do we leverage those conversations? How do we leverage that research and look at evidence-based methodologies to move things forward? And so really looking at diverse lenses and perspectives, I think, is one of the biggest growth opportunities. As you mentioned, I have a doctorate. Well, that doctorate's in educational equity and executive leadership. So really looking at how can I bring people to the table, also looking around and saying, well, who's not at the table, Mike, that should be invited to understand things. I want public safety to work for everybody. And in order for that to occur, we have to have conversations ahead of time to look at the good, the bad, the indifferent, to figure out how we can make and evolve changes in the future to make sure that it is something that can work for everyone. And so the experience there at CU was so valuable. When I came to Overland Park, I didn't know much about Kansas City, the Kansas City metro area. I had done research on the city. Overland Park was really nice. It's in a great county. It has great school districts. It has so many great infrastructures in regards to it. I knew that I could add value there. And it was just very fortunate that I came into an organization that had great members, had great leadership, and I was just able to capitalize really on the people that worked here and kind of help as a team move it into the next level.
Yeah. Now, speaking of the World Cup, so managing and securing and protecting large scale events has become, a hot button and one of the top issues in policing, not just because of the World Cup and the Olympics coming up, but also political events and the attempted assassination of President Trump and the assassination of Charlie Kirk and all the things that go along with that today is, it's a crazy environment. I think you're a leader in thinking about managing and protecting large scale events. Just love to hear your thoughts. And as you guys are preparing for the World Cup, what's that like today versus maybe what it is in the past? And just how's your thinking evolved around, again, protecting when you got masses of people coming in for a certain event?
So it kind of boils down to a couple things, Mike. Really, when we look at these large scale events, no police department can do it on its own. And the police department is one piece. But when you look at a city as a whole, you have to look at it holistically. Who else should be leveraging? The Parks Department is going to be a big one, right? When we look at traffic infrastructure, the traffic engineers and bringing people in and looking at data numbers associated with it, bringing in and making sure that we're partnering and collaborating with our different policing partners. And so that's on a local, state, county, national level as well. It is really great here in Kansas City. We have great partnerships with our surrounding police departments. You had mentioned Stacy. Stacy has been just such a great mentor to me since I've been here, and assistance, because as I said, I was new to the Kansas City area. And so she has helped me be able to adapt and really engage as a thought partner and bounce ideas off of in regards to the area. And so when you look at large scale events, it's the fact that no police department can do it on its own. You do need community, you do need city leadership and city departments. And so that is one thing that we are really leveraging. We're also looking at different technology. What technology can we bring to the forefront to assist us with those, whether it's DFR or the drones, first responders, right? Is that it? The different body-worn cameras and the translation piece. So as you mentioned, there's going to be a lot of people cascading down in our Kansas City metro area, and Overland Park's one of them. How can we make sure that we're bringing on an inclusive and welcoming environment for all that come? And those that English may not be their first language, how do we have translation services to be able to assist and have those communication styles and making sure that we're speaking with everybody the best that we can? And so leveraging technology to make sure that we're doing those things. And so partnership and collaboration, equipment, technology, and resources, and really transparent conversations around it. And knowing, again, that policing is one component, but there's so many others that want to help and have great ideas and viewpoints, and they should be coming forth to assist as well, and should be welcomed and invited.
Now, speaking of technology, you and I were at an event a few weeks ago talking about AI.
Mhm.
Like, how do you see sort of the future of police technology, whether it's protecting large scale events or just your day to day operations in the police department? I mean, you're forward thinking in leadership and how what is your why and working with the community and bringing partners in. How do you think about AI going forward and how that's going to impact both policing and the communities that you serve?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about, AI with the right governance pieces around it. Someone had mentioned to me, Mike, the other day that this is the fastest technology has ever evolved, but right now in this space and time, it's going to be the slowest. And so it's interesting to hear those dynamics, but it makes complete sense. And so where we can use AI within policing, we kind of started evolving into that landscape and making sure that we have different policies in place, making sure that our officers and professional staff are trained in it, also making sure that our community knows how we're using it, what we're doing, how it's going to be used responsibly, and where we can be transparent, we should be. And so looking at those things as well from a transparency piece. But I do think, I got hired on as a police officer in 1998. If you're looking at policing from that mindset, using that same technology and not evolving forward, you can't do it. It has to have a dual or a collaborative piece between two of them in regards to it. And so I look forward to the more development of AI and making sure that we are doing it with certain parameters in place.
And how would you and I mean, we always say like, oh, these young officers, they're, digitally native. They grew up with iPhones in their hands from a young age. And I mean, but how are like, love to just like, is that true? Like, is
Mhm.
your officers out there on the street today, young officers or maybe older officers, like how are they viewing AI coming along and all the technology that they're going to have at their fingertips that you certainly didn't have at your fingertips? And, when you started in 1998.
Yeah, I actually think our Gen Z officers and those coming on board actually embrace it because they grew up around it. There's actually research that has been done that today's applicants, policing applicants, are choosing departments just as much as departments are choosing them, but they're looking for things. They're looking for technological sophistication. They're looking for forward thinking leadership. They're looking for that innovation and growth piece, and they want to be a part of it. And so I applaud all of those things. And so departments that can really showcase that forward thinking culture can really, I believe, attract some stronger talent because it is something that is norm to them that they grew up around.
Yeah, yeah. Now I want to go back to, your thoughts around leadership and the why, because one thing I know that and you've written about this, and I would encourage anybody listening to, you can certainly just Google. That even sounds old now. Does anybody? I don't think people Google. They use ChatGPT or Gemini. But some of the stuff that you've written in Police Chief or Police One. But one was about I think it's your executive mentorship program. One, I want to hear
Mhm,
the idea, and then two, I'll spoil the surprise. It failed the first
mhm.
time, and in policing, failure is often not a good thing, but it was for, just talk about that a little bit. I don't want to tell the story, but talk about the what you were trying to achieve, how it failed or why it failed, and then what you did
Mhm.
next.
Yeah, so our police department had launched really like an executive mentorship program, which really means when we promote those to sergeant or first line supervision roles, both professional staff and commission, sometimes we think where they were such a good officer or employee, they must be really good in this leadership space as well. But the skill set needed to be able to do both those things are drastically different. And we as an organization and leaders have an obligation to help people. I always say we need to wrap our arms around and make sure that these people are set up for success. We want them set up for success. And so we want to create systems and environment in which they can excel. And so this executive mentorship program, I say, was a little ad hoc. There wasn't really a lot of structure around it. It was kind of like, well, Mike, you're good at it, so why don't you be a mentor? But you didn't really have the guidance necessary needed in regards to like, I guess I just meet with someone and we have these organic conversations. And so really it came out of a podcast that Simon did with the previous CEO of WD-40, and his name is Gary Ridge. And so he had written a book, and Simon had said, the best mentorship program I have ever seen is through WD-40. And so I'm like, that blue and yellow can in regards to it. And I know that in Simon's book, The Infinite Game, he talks about worthy rivals. Like, where are we looking both inside the public sector and outside the private sector to learn from things? And so we reached out to Gary Ridge with WD-40 and we said, we heard that you have one of the best mentorship programs. How can we as a police department entity really learn from you? And so we teamed up with him. We teamed up with his person in charge of their training program, and they gave us everything, Mike. They gave us what their training program looks like, what their executive mentorship program looks like, and we adopted ours after that. And it provided more structure around it. It provided different projects associated with it. It helped the mentor as much as it was helping the mentee really guide these conversations. And so I say it's an evolution and process, but I would tell leaders, as long you continue to look around the policing field on how we can do better. And I would also expand that even more, like, hey, that is one avenue, and I think it's great. But what also are our private sector partners doing that we can learn from in policing and say, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to take it. I'm going to, make it our own. And so WD-40 and Gary really assisted our police department with that.
That's a fascinating story. And I think people would, police chiefs and sheriffs and colonels of state police agencies would be surprised if they reached out to like CEOs of private sector companies, like how many will respond because they're looking to get involved. And here's the CEO of WD-40, which is, I'm just thinking about spraying it on like make things not squeaky anymore and things I do WD-40, but like he responded to you and like, how can we help? And that's a great story. But one part of it that makes it a great story is in the article you sort of described this, used the F word, and the F word is not used a lot in policing in good ways, but you said it failed and failure was okay. And then that's like, just talk a little bit about failure in policing and how we have to normalize like trying new things or things are evolving, that failure is indeed okay.
Yeah, I think, Mike, insatiable curiosity breeds innovation. So if we're not allowing people to question, to develop, to do things more, which means when you do that, some things are going to fail, right? But it's a progression towards something even better, right? And it should be building. And so I constantly say we're building this plane as we're flying it, which means there's two types of leaders, Mike, right? There's the ones that build the plane while we're flying it. And that's definitely me. Like, we're airborne. It might get a little bumpy. It's okay. We're going to fix things as we go. And there's other leaders that wait to build the perfect plane. And I just say it's going to be amazing. And I bet the seats recline all the way and the ride is perfectly smooth. But by the time that plane lands, we're on our third island where we have moved ahead. But one leader needs the other. One's not better than the other person. If your whole team is build the plane while we're flying it, then things are going to fall through the cracks and you're going to have some challenges. So you need the engineers as much as you need the people that is probably a little bit more like me. I make the best decision I can with the information I have, and I'm going to tweak and I'm be flexible. I think the best leaders, like we said, are the ones that can be flexible, pivot, or be able to figure things out as we go. And so you need both those working in succinct hand in hand to build out the great things. And so making sure that we're providing safe and secure environments for our people to thrive, making sure they know that curiosity, you can ask the questions and say, why do we do this, Chief? Doesn't this make more sense over here? Because that's truly how you evolve a police department and any business moving forward. And so it should be okay to make sure that we know, hey, Mikey, this didn't hit the mark this time, but that's okay. What did you learn from it? What can we bring forth and what can we do even more?
Yeah. And one thing you just said that, we obviously everyone knows I'm really close with Rick Smith, the founder and CEO of Axon. And one thing that he advises all leaders, public safety leaders and private sector leaders in some of his talks is in today's world, especially with how fast technology is evolving and AI, one thing that you have to do is you have to be curious. And you've said that multiple times and you've written about it. I just maybe just a little bit more about that is a change in mindset. Perhaps, I don't know. I'm just thinking in terms of policing, like to say, hey, chief, you got to be curious. Like that is what you do. And obviously you're well read, up on the latest research. And I know you think about technology, but like, how do we get that and expand it out? So like you have in today's world, and as Rick has said, as you've said, you have to be curious to continue to evolve and make sure you're doing the right things.
Yeah, I think if you're not curious, you're falling behind. And so you walk into these organizations that say, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? Or if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it. And that's the demise of any organization and any business. It's that curiosity piece that allows it to grow. And you can look at different things. When I spoke at IACP with Chief Jack Hawley of the Castle Rock Police Department, we actually broke down and kind of talked about Blockbuster and what that looks like. And we talked about different entities in regards to missing that curiosity piece. And when I tried to do research on curiosity, like I really learned, Mike, that as a young age, right, kids ask questions all the time to their mom and dad. Why is this? What is this? Why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? What does this look like? And over time, sometimes we teach them, stop asking questions. And so you wonder if there's an evolution or psychology behind that. The curiosity we actually take out of people from a young age going all the way up. That's enough questions. We don't need to ask this anymore. And now we're trying to kind of bring that back to say, it's okay to ask those questions. I just went to briefing today and stopped by downstairs and was like, what questions do you have for me? What ideas do you have? What feedback do you have? Like, what does that look like? And so I'm always wanting to hear great ideas. They say in policing, it's actually the first line officers and professional staff that have most of the information, but it's the chiefs up here making most of the decisions. And if there's a huge gap, you're making decisions on information that you don't know about. And so how do we lessen those? And the only way we can do it is to create non-silos within organizations, try to compress some things a little bit, and making sure that people feel safe and secure in their positions to come in and say, hey, Doreen, I know you said something like this, but what about these things, or what does that look like? And so I am definitely one of those that I like to hear it. I like to hear the ideas. I had a dispatch supervisor in my office the other day that had an idea, and I said, I really like that, and we launched on it. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that is
Right
why
on.
we, bring people forth to our department.
Now, for those who are younger than perhaps our younger listeners or viewers, Blockbuster was a place you used to go into
Yes, that's right.
to rent videos that you would then take home and put into this machine called a VCR. And this is before you can watch everything online. And we make a joke about it, but that's not that long ago when we used to go rent videos at Blockbuster. But they didn't evolve. Netflix actually
Mm-hmm.
went to them and tried to partner, and they laughed them out of the office. That's what makes the Blockbuster Netflix stories so fascinating about
Correct.
how you have to evolve or die, and Blockbuster died. I think
Yeah,
there's
no,
one left in Alaska.
yeah,
Now,
that's a great point.
before we wrap up here, one question I ask everybody who's been on the podcast, and we talked a lot about leadership and a lot of other things, but what do you think what's the one thing in your mind that you think policing as a profession is not thinking enough about, not talking enough about, that's on the horizon that we really need to, start thinking more about? What is that one issue or two issues that like you just don't think we're discussing enough?
I definitely think there's a lot of discussions out there. I think for me, sometimes it's making sure that we're moving our discussions to action as well. And so I kind of like to look at, policing organizations back in the day is if a crime happened, Mike, and you wanted to report something, you obviously went, just like now, to the police department who had jurisdictional authority over it. And really, if we looked at it as a business, I don't want people to come to the Overland Park Police Department because they have to. I want them to come here because they want to, because we're the best. We're providing the best quality customer service. We're providing the best leadership and community trust within our organizations. We're providing the best technology. We're using evidence-based methodology. And so I think really evolving the profession to have conversations around we are here because of our community. And I want our community to choose us, not because they have to, but because they want to. And so really making sure our core of our decisions center around a very much humanity piece associated with it. And, we're here to serve people. It's definitely a public service. And how can we do that? And making sure that we stay the core of the mission, protecting the vulnerable from harm.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to end the podcast is with that mission, with the goals that you have, protecting the vulnerable, and you want them to run to you. You want them to come to you, not run away. So, Chief Doreen Jokerst, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and keep doing what you're doing at Overland Park. And it's great seeing you. So, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Mike, for this opportunity. I truly appreciate it.